What's up, Dragon Brood? Y'all seem to like these videos, so I just keep bringing them back. And we got more stuff to talk about for Tarkir Dragonstorm because damn if every card almost isn't worth talking about in this set.
I know, man. There's something to say about all like 250 plus of these non-basic land cards. We
Yeah.
could seriously sit here and talk about this whole set for like 5 hours.
Maybe we'll have to do a co-stream at some point and just
Seriously.
talk about this set.
What decks we're building and all that. That'd be fun.
But yeah, before we dive into this, if you haven't followed Dev, you should do that because he likes doing magic stuff. And if you like my stuff, you probably like his stuff because we're kind of like the same thing, just different skin tone. I'm just saying. You should probably go watch.
We're very similar. I will say you put out more gameplay than me, but that's good because you're better at Magic than I am. So if you're frustrated by my gameplay videos because I make the misplays and stuff, go check out his gameplay videos.
I'm not that much better. I'm kind of I was once upon a time. Now I'm kind of a has-been, but you know.
I'm the same way. Like, I don't even really try playing Magic. What I do is I try to have fun.
That's exactly it. Fun first.
Right.
So those of you that may have not been here before and seen that we actually take 5 cards each. We talk about the cards we think are underrated, which could be defined a bunch of different ways. Sometimes it's just maybe not that expensive and we think it's going to be an expensive card. Maybe it's a card nobody's talking about. Maybe it's a card people are talking about, but not enough because the card's even better than people think. So yeah, this should be a fun list in this set because my goodness, there are so many cards to talk about.
There's so many cards that are obviously busted or like commander viable, or they have like a big name attached to them like Elspeth or Ugin, that I feel like there's a lot of cards flying under the radar because this set has a pretty high, just average power level.
Oh, yeah.
I do think there's stuff that people are missing. So I kind of can't wait to get into this one.
Why don't we get into it? And you go first with your, I guess we'll call it number 5.
Ooh, I get to go first. So my number 5 here, I guess, is Dragonologist. This is 3 mana.
Oh, yeah.
It's 2 and a blue. It's a 1/3 wizard. Now, here's the thing. Your untapped dragons have hexproof. That's cool. But when it enters, you look at the top 6 of your library, you get an instant sorcery or dragon, put it in your hand. The rest go on the bottom in a random order. 6 cards. You get a 6-card dig. I would say this is fine even in not dragons decks because like it can find your sweeper for the next turn. It can block on that turn. It can find, card draw, removal, your big like spell that ends you the game or whatever it is. Just in instants and sorceries. There's so much for this to find. A 6-card dig on a blocker, I think is just a fantastic Magic card. That's me.
You know what's funny about this card? You almost don't even need it in a dragon deck.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, like if there's some combo type decks, you might play this just to dig for 6 cards to get the spell you're looking for.
Yep. That's 10% of your starting deck.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 3 mana 1/3, so it's not like the biggest creature or the best thing you can get for 3 mana, but if it's a pseudo tutor for 3 mana to set up something on turn 4. So if your goal is to try to combo, maybe. I think if this does pop off, it's probably not going to be in a dragon deck.
Yeah, agreed. I think it might be in a deck that incidentally plays like a few dragons just because they're strong cards, but not in a dragons deck. I feel like this is, again, like you said, mostly to find your combo piece, or again, just people underestimate a 6-card deck. It's ridiculous. I had somebody say, like, isn't this basically Thunder Trap Trainer? And it's like, well, it gets to look at 50% more cards than the Thunder Trap Trainer does. That's insane, dude. So I don't know. I don't have that much to say about it other than I think that people are undervaluing a 6-card dig that finds not anything, but like a lot of relevant stuff in your control deck or mid-range deck, while also just like putting a body on the table. I know it's just a 1/3, but a body's good for blocking or whatever you're doing.
Also say this too, like you can tell there's a little something to it because it's kind of like a mid-tier rare. It's like a $3, $4 rare on a lot of sites. So like some people are paying attention, but they ain't talking about it. And
too much.
There's a chance this could go up if it finds the right deck.
Well, like maybe people just want it in their like Commander Dragons deck or something. I didn't know it was that much. That's kind of surprising.
Yeah.
I've heard more or less, not just have I heard moot conversation about this, but whenever I bring it up, whether it's like on stream or in like an actual YouTube video, someone in the chat or comments section has to be like, I don't know about Dragonologist. And it's like, I do. I'm fairly confident this card can see some play somewhere. Maybe things like Kiora or Steam Core Scholar are better ways of drawing cards on 3 for blue decks, but 6 cards is massive. Absolutely.
Yeah.
and it's really good at being flickered and reanimated with helping hand even. So I just think this card has a lot it can do. That's all.
I'm into it.
But what is your number 5? I'm interested to know.
All right, 5.
I really
We
am.
have to talk about a throwback for a second. There was a card that used to annoy players for us old heads. You might remember a card called Mystic Snake.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
Flash 2/2
I know
could
what
counter
card
a
you're on.
spell, like super annoying. We kind of got a card after that was like Urtai. Was it Urtai Resurrected? I think was the card,
Yeah,
right? You
yeah.
could counter a thing or you could kill a creature. Your opponent got to draw a card. Well, now we kind of have something in the middle of both. And I don't think I've seen anybody talking about this card, but Fangkeeper's Familiar.
Man,
This card, okay, so it's a colorless, a black, a blue, and a green. So it's 4 mana. It does take 3 different colors, but we have lots of multi-lands. So that's not a thing. But it's also a bigger body than either of those other 2 cards. Where the Mystic Snake was a 2/2, Urtai was a 3/2. This is a 3/3. So for the same cost of Urtai, you just swapped out one of the colorless mana for a green one, right? But you also get another choice. You could gain 3 life and surveil
Surveil
3.
3.
You can destroy an enchantment, which either of those couldn't do previously, or you can counter a spell. Like, awesome. I'm
Yep.
going to hate this card when people are playing
Yep.
it against me.
What is it? Does it cast specifically Essence Scatter? Is it counter target creature spell or non-creature spell?
Yes, counter target creature spell.
Okay, so it's Essence Scatter. Yeah, this card, I have talked about this card a lot. I haven't seen that much talk of it, but I will say this. On stream, I think we talked about this card, and I asked my chat, which is better, this or Tranquil Frillback? And my entire chat was like, this. All day, this, baby. And I 100% agree. Frillback busts up an enchantment when it comes into play. Sometimes it gains you some life, right? I feel like they're very similar casting costs. This, the Flash, dude. The Flash is what puts this on the map. But this works in basically every situation against whatever deck you're up against. If I'm playing against aggro and I make it to turn 4, flash it in, block with it, gain 3 life, fix my next draw to find a sweep, whatever. If I'm playing against Caretaker's Talent or Unholy Annex, blow up the enchantment, like there's so much you can do with this. And obviously just counter target creature spell. Well, there's a bevy. Sure. There's a bevy of like 4 or 5 mana creatures at the top of the curve in standard right now, from Overlords, Zur, I know it's a 3 mana guy, Biza, Sheldred, whatever, Archfiend of the Dross. There's so many things to get mana value on when you use this as a counter spell, or at least get, the same mana value. And get a body in play. Mystic Snake is actually, sorry for taking the reins here. Mystic Snake is one of my favorite Magic cards of all time. And so I am extremely excited about this. This is in my top 10 cards in the set. And to your point, I guess I am really excited, or not excited, but really surprised. Like no one's talking about this card.
Yeah, again, also fairly low value for what it is, going for like $3 on some websites.
That's insane. It should be like a $7 card pre-release prices.
And here's another interesting thing: is this is the type of card that can go in the Sultai graveyard decks, the Sultai mill stuff, because if you're returning it to play, now you get to surveil and gain the 3 and reload your graveyard. Yep. Right. If you have a way to sacrifice it, now you always have the ability to counter something or destroy an enchantment because you just get it back out, do the thing again. Like, there's a lot of stuff I feel like you could do with this.
This is incredibly cute. I'm not saying this is a real deck, but like this is incredibly cute alongside Muldrotha. Being able to play this out of your yard once a turn whenever you want to is busted. But honestly, obviously the card doesn't need to be like, it doesn't have to have crazy interactions.
No,
it's one of those just good in a vacuum. This card is good in standard period because enchantments are really important. And, fighting against aggro decks is really important, and large creatures are really important. So it just does on each axis. It does something against some of the best decks in standard. This is a
genuinely,
card.
if I'm playing Sultai, you can just play 2 of these just because.
Yeah, why wouldn't you do that? I actually think that this card kind of tunes Sultai into a more reactive deck all by itself, because you have so many options with Sultai. That could just be a creature-based mid-range deck that plays decent removal, counterspell here or there, maybe tries to tempo them out, right? And I feel like this leans so far in the direction of tempo that it's going to change the makeup of Sultai decks all by itself.
It could.
You could just go Preacher of the Schism or something on 3, or a 2-drop creature, Deep Cavern Bat on 2. I think this changes the entire deck into a more kind of control-y, almost draw go kind of thing, just because this card exists. I'm with you 100%. This card is bonkers, dude.
All right. So before we become a snake channel here, why don't you tell us what your number 4
Yeah,
was?
I like I said, I've got so much to say about that card. I love that card so much, and it's your pick, so I kind of feel bad, but
No,
like
you're fine.
that card is a good pick, I guess, is all I'm saying. Underrated card number 2 is such a weird one. Is a veteran ice climber. See, this is 2 mana, 1 in a blue for a 1/3 human scout with vigilance, and it cannot be blocked. Whenever this creature
Mm.
attacks, up to 1 target player mills cards equal to this creature's power. Now, I assume you're always going to be choosing yourself to mill with this. I've seen people say, just a couple of people talking about this card. I've seen people say that you should hit your opponent with the mill. But my thing is, if you increase this guy's power to like a 5/5, well, that's going to kill him before the mill does, right? So you should probably be targeting yourself with this dude. The thing is, my favorite thing about this guy is that he's a 2 mana unblockable guy. Those aren't always playable every time. Like, he's no invisible stalker, right? But I still think there's something kind of just good in and of itself about a 2 mana unblockable dude. And this guy stays up to block with a decent toughness. I don't hate him for that. Increase his power a little bit. You're kind of doing a lot of work with him.
Yeah, it's an interesting card because it feels like somebody on R&D is saying, we really are trying to make mill decks a thing. Like, the last set, we had the one you could choose to mill both players, and then like
Yeah.
when you can exhaust to mill half the count or whatever, like double the count.
That
Right?
card was awesome, dude.
There's so many things that have come out, like 1 or 2 in each set, and now it's like, okay, well, what's the shortcoming of the mill decks? You kind of don't have enough early blockers, right? Sometimes you need to just chump block in a mouse or 2 just to buy yourself some time, and it's like, well, what if you had a guy that could block and also mill for a card or 2?
Yeah.
Like, is
Yeah.
that good enough? Like, maybe.
If you can play this guy on 2 and then like Mind Skinner on 3, then I guess this guy is technically doing 2 mills, right? Because he hits for a mill when he gets
Yeah.
in, but he also hits for a mill for his damage if there's a Mind Skinner out. And again, if you can increase his power in that deck, then obviously you get a bunch of mills in, right? So I think that in a mill deck, yeah, you're right. That deck might need some more creatures. In a self-mill deck, you could always play like Philology Archaeologist or some other cards in your 2-drop slot over this. It all depends on kind of how aggressive your self-mill deck is and how many tricks it has for increasing this dude's power. Because once you get his power to 3 or 4, you're not only getting in for a ton of unblockable damage, like your opponent has to worry about it, but you're also milling yourself for 3 or 4 cards every turn, and that could be incredible. So I think there's so many cool angles with this guy, but at the end of the day, a 2 mana unblockable dude is just kind of good in and of itself. So
Yeah,
I
there's a
haven't
world where that
seen.
could just be in an aggro deck.
Yeah,
Like being something
exactly.
that's unblockable, if you have like ward enchantments or other things to put on it, like
Yep.
it's just getting through and your opponent can't do anything about it.
Throw a Sheltered by Ghost on this, and like you're only getting in for 2 damage every turn, but it's guaranteed lifelink unblocked damage. So like I don't know, there's kind of something about that that I appreciate. So can't hate an unblockable, like efficient unblockable dude. But with that said,
Or in
oh,
some decks where you want to play ninjas,
I didn't even think about that. Like
you know?
this guy on 2, and then oh my god, what's his
The
name?
planeswalker.
The
Kaito.
planeswalker.
Yeah.
Kaito. I just couldn't, my brain wouldn't do it. But yeah, you Kaito this, right? You Kaito off this on turn 3. That could totally work. Could totally work. So I don't know, man. I don't know. I think it's all right. As a matter of fact, let me look at this card one more time. Because yeah, whenever it attacks, so you attack, you get the attacks trigger, and you can mill yourself or your
Mm-hmm.
opponent, and then it goes unblocked. You get your Kaito, so you get both in the same turn. That's nasty. I don't know, man. There's something to it. There's something to it. But I'm just a sucker for unblockability early. But what is your next call?
All right. My next one, and this is one where I think there are some people that are into it, but I don't think everybody's sold on it the way I'm hearing people talk about it. And I've argued with some people over this card. So it wasn't going to be on my list, but ended up making my list after the fact. And it's Magmatic Hellkite. It's 2 colorless or
Oh,
2 generic, whatever you want to call it, 2 red for a 4/5 flyer. But when it enters, you destroy target non-basic land, which I expect there's going to be a lot since everybody's going to be trying to play 3 and 4
3
colors now.
colors. Yep.
Now the controller gets to search for a basic, but the basic enters tapped with a stun counter on it. This is pretty big for a lot of reasons. Like the first, if you're on the play especially, you just lock your opponent down from being able to do anything to your board for at least a turn, right? Like they're not going to be able to Day of Judgment or anything else when they untap because they're going to be down a land, right?
Yep.
So that's pretty big. The other thing too is if you're building dragons, a lot of the dragons decks are going to be red something, right? At 4 mana, it's key because you have the, what do they call it? The herd heirloom. That's 2 mana that you can tap. So you can go
Yep.
from 2 to 4.
Yep.
You have a 3/1 now, the 2 mana creature that can tap for red
Oh,
mana.
taps for red. You also
Another
have
way to go from
Sarkhan.
2 to 4. You also have Sarkhan that you could reveal a dragon, make a treasure. Another way to go from 2 to 4, right?
Uh-huh.
So you're going to need the 4 cost dragons, and this is probably one of the best 4 cost dragons we can play right now.
Like in
So,
all of standard. Yeah. I
and
could
it's only
agree.
$4 right now. I like, if dragons are going to be a thing, this is going to be a part of a lot of those dragon decks.
Yeah. This is another one. Like, I think there is an undercurrent of, based on my comment section, there's an undercurrent of some people who are crossing their fingers, hoping that this is some sort of sleeper pick. And I tend to agree. I've come from the days of Avalanche Riders being a decent
Yeah.
magic card. Like right now we have Krenko's Buzz Crusher is the name of the card in standard. Very similar to this artifact creature, same stat line, same mana cost exactly, but doesn't stun the land. I
Yep.
think stunning the land, I mean, you've already alluded to this, but I think stunning the land is just a huge deal for tempo and standard. You're not casting Stone Rain, you're not literally casting Avalanche Riders, but that one turn means so much. And like you said, they don't get a Day of Judgment or they don't get a Sunfall or whatever it is. And that could just win you the game outright. At the very least, it could buy you the turn you need to continue getting value or whatever it is. So, yeah, I actually have some hopes for this card too, but have not seen a whole lot of people talk about it. And personally, my favorite point that you made is just that, like, with Sarkhan and some of these other 2 drops, like, we're looking for 4 drop dragons, and we got a few in standard, but this is kind of looking like it has the best haircut out of all
Yeah,
of them.
you tend to have this one, whatever the one is that has the extra adventure on it or whatever that you
Yeah,
can.
Decadent Dragon, the
Yeah.
Rakdos one. Yeah.
And those are probably like the two you're going to be playing most of the time if as your 4 cost dragons.
Yeah. Because you need an actual dragon. Like, you can play like the Elder Dragon War, but that's not a dragon, right? So,
Yeah, and there's some other good dragons, but they tend to be 5 or more, right? Where they're
right.
talking about the double damage dragon, the terror of the peaks, whatever. They're all like
Yeah.
5,
These are
is the
all
problem.
5s. Yeah. So, yeah, 100%, man. Because one of the problems with these is that always that they need a deck, especially mono red 4 drops. I feel like they printed so many good ones where they always need a deck. But in this case, everyone's going to be trying to make dragons work, and if they do work, I think this card will be a big part of it. I really
And
do.
you actually almost stumbled onto my next point about the card is it may not even end up in dragon decks, right?
Yeah,
If you just want to play mono red, maybe you want to play big red, maybe you want to
big
play
red.
Gruul aggro.
Well,
This is a real quality card to play on your turn 3 or turn 4.
yeah, I really like this on turn 4 in Big Red. Big Red wants to play like 8 4 drops. So you can play this and Krenko, or not Krenko. You can play this and Koth.
Yeah.
And you don't really care so much about playing so many 4s, right? And those are both, I think, premium 4 drops for
Also,
a Big Red
randomly
deck.
4/5 instead of 4/4 for no good reason. Like it's
Yeah,
4/5
that
with a good
matters.
ability, and I don't really know why it's extra beefy on the back end, but I'll take it.
Yeah, we're so used to these 4 mana flyers being 4/4s. But we've seen with a couple cards, Sheldred, Biza, like we've seen how often that extra point of toughness matters like tremendously. So yeah, good call
All
on that
right.
too.
What do you got for your number 3?
What do I got? Well, it is okay. There were a few Jeskai cards that I considered, but at the end of the day, I told myself I can only include one Jeskai card. And there are cards that are getting a lot of press, whether or not people like them. So I can't really say they're being overlooked. A card that I do think is being overlooked is Rediscover the Way. This is a Jeskai saga, costs Jeskai colors to cast. So just 3 mana. On the first 2 chapters, both of them, you look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put 1 into your hand, the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. On chapter 3, whenever you cast a non-creature spell this turn, target creature you control gains double strike until end of turn. So classic 3rd chapter that people are just pretending doesn't exist. When I do see people evaluate this card, people are just, the 3rd chapter is whatever. Like, no, the 3rd chapter could actually be really, really good. But all that aside, do you remember Stock Up from the last set? Uncommon that ended up seeing like legacy play. It was really on no one's radar. This is kind of a slower version of Stock Up. The cool thing though, because a lot of my chat was pointing that out the other night. Oh, slow Stock Up, slow Stock Up. The cool thing about it being slow is that the second card it gives you with all of your mana untapped. which I
Yeah.
think is actually really important. So yeah, it takes you an extra second to get that second card, but it's also again looking at the top six, kind of like Dragonologist. You're looking at effectively the top six, and you're getting the best two out of the top six in this case. And I think apart from that, it's an enchantment. There's all kinds of value you can get off of casting an enchantment from Eerie. You can sacrifice enchantments to a number of different cards in this format right now. So just it being an enchantment, I think is good value in general. But yeah, the two best cards from your top six, and one of them you're fully untapped for, Shields Up. I think it's actually way better than anyone's giving it credit for.
I'll say this for the card is that when I first saw it, I was thinking, is this something I really want to do on like turn 3? But then I realized, like, if I'm playing a couple of them, maybe my goal isn't to play it on 3. Maybe I'm doing something on turn 5 or turn 6, and I'm looking for that sweeper for the next turn, or maybe
Exactly.
looking for my planeswalker or whatever, right? Like, maybe, right? Maybe it's not a turn 3 card, and maybe that's where some of the hate for the card comes from.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just something you play a couple copies of as a later game value card.
So I think people's definition of a do nothing is getting a little wonk at this point. A little wonky, a little wacky, because like this doesn't do nothing. Like this does put a card into your hand when it
Sure.
comes out, but I've seen somebody refer to this on Reddit as a do nothing, which is just a wild thing. That's why I'm so raw about it. But but this, you've alluded to here, this gives you 6 looks plus whatever card you drew for the turn. This gives you 6 looks at your sweep or your combo piece or whatever. I think this is probably worth skipping, even though again I'll continue not doing that. Skipping your turn 3, even though it's effectively like a kind of a bad anticipate on turn 3. And I think that's what most people see. Is most
Sure.
people, it's just bad anticipate that sorcery speed costs too much mana, and I get that, but it pays you so much more than just an anticipate
But
effect by
there
the
are
end
some
of it.
real scenarios with a card like this where turn 1, turn 2, maybe you torch something, maybe you bounce something or hit something with, like, I don't know, a get lost. So you're not really facing much of a threat
Yeah,
anyway. So you're
you've
like, okay, I'll
controlled the
just do
board.
this, reload my hand. Now I'm ready to go, and I get to get another card. And like, all right, now what? That's
Yeah,
not that unreal.
sometimes I tell people like rather than considering what it would be like if you played a card, consider if it was played against you. In that same situation, right? 1 drop, your opponent torches it. 2 drop, your opponent abrades it. Turn 3, they play this, and now you know that they took out your early creatures. They got some breathing room. You know that, like, okay, on turn 3 they drew a card for turn, then they drew the best from their top 3. Turn 4 they drew the best from their top 3 and then drew a card for turn. Your control deck's up so many cards on you if they were able to control the board state early, and they've got all their mana untapped. It's just like, as the player sitting across from them, they've got the 2 best cards from the top 6 and all their mana. That's wild to me. I don't want to play against that. I don't want to play against that at all. And if they happen to cast a couple of spells that give them creatures or that, make their board state better, well, suddenly the next turn, removal spell towards the tower, the 2 removal spells and their little guys get in with double strike. It just seems like decent, okay. It's okay to me. So I don't know. I just, like I said, there's a few
Not
Jeskai
just
cards.
what they got, what they also didn't have to draw that's going to be worthless.
True, because they get to put those cards on bottom now.
Yep.
So they get to blast through land pockets and other just garbage, And note too, nobody's talking about this. The first 2 modes potentially fuel the last chapter because they're drawing you non-creature
Yeah.
spells. You can then cast and give double strike or whatever. So there's a lot to this card, man. I don't think it just goes. If you get it in limited, it goes in like a straight up kind of Jeskai aggro tempo kind of thing. But I think there's a lot more you can do with it in standard, like a Jeskai control deck. We're tapping out for control anyway. The blue white control deck is kind of a tap out control deck. So if they can pull it off, I think this deck can too. I really don't think it's a bad card. But anyway, that said, what do you got next? What's on deck for the dragon?
Well, it's kind of, in a way, a secret dragon in the set. So you kind of led me into that one, but we're going to be talking about Temur battlecrier. It's a green, a blue, and a red for a 4/3.
Yeah.
During your turn, spells you cast cost 1 less for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. There's a few things going on here. One, it's a 4/3 for 3, solid.
Not bad.
But every spell, not just creature spells, but every spell you cast gets cheaper for each creature you control 4 or greater. Now, I say secret dragon because, well, most of the dragons are going to be 4 power, and you want cheaper dragons. So if you're playing Temur dragons, this is already another way to make those 4 and 5 cost dragons cheaper, right? You pay this on
Yep.
3, now you can play a 5 cost guy on the next turn, right? Which is super big. But I've even been building some test lists that are just like Temur aggro that you can play this. Then the next turn you can play, say, Outcast or Trailblazer for 2,
Yes.
and
Yep.
you get an extra mana. But the next thing is 2 less. So now you play Big Sark, the 5/4 Sarkhan. Now you have something with haste on top of being able to draw a card and being able to attack, right? Like there's some silly lines you can get
These
to
lines
the.
work out in
I,
insane ways.
Also, I've been looking at a list for uh Pioneer that actually turns like the mono green deck into a Temur battlecrier deck because you can play all the multi lands. And now all the things you're playing are cheaper because almost all the big things you're playing are power 4 or greater anyway.
Greater. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So lots of stuff you can do with this.
Man, when we were reviewing every card in the set the other night, I brought this card to my chat and wanted to know how they felt about it specifically or just talk to them briefly about it. And like, I was surprised at the number of people who were like, it's an expensive mana dork. Next, I sleep. And like, this is the kind of you mentioned Outcast or Trailblazer. Let me start there for a second. This card is insane with that card specifically because that card draws you more cards and is a 4-power guy and gives you mana when it comes into play. So that's like even more mana you're generating just with Trailblazer's cards insane. But basically any 4-power creature that you play after you have this guy out turns him into a guy that ramps 2. And then if you play another 4-power guy, he ramps 3, then 4, then 5. This dude actually helps you snowball from huge creature to huge creature to huge creature. And there will be turns where you're able to play a 4-power guy like 4 times because your 4-power guys are effectively costing you just 1 or 2 mana at that point.
Yeah, just colored mana. That's it.
Right. That's it. That's all you have to do is pay colored costs. So like, this seems kind of crazy to me, especially, and you pointed this out too, but like it's already a decent cost. It's a 3 mana, 4-power guy, which isn't terrible. I guess it dies to nowhere to run and bolts.
Sure, but here's the thing, right?
You can't have everything,
Let's say you play turn 1 elf, it gets killed. You play turn 2 Sarkhan, it gets killed. You play this guy, like, do they have just 3 removal spells in their opener hand?
Are they done removing stuff now? They might.
But then, like, okay, turn 4, I'll just play my 4-cost dragon anyway. Yeah. Right, exactly. You know what I mean? Like
thanks
okay.
for removing all my little guys. All I've got is huge dragons left. But I agree. Well, I've been looking at this guy like hard all previous season, really surprised that he's not kind of taken off a little bit more in discussion because he's not just a 3 mana rock. Like he's a 3 mana rock on a body. There are plenty of cards in the last few sets that care about specifically creatures power 4 or greater. And he is one of those in and of himself. Extra copies of him, like in multiples, basically makes it to where like you don't have to pay mana for anything.
Here's a fun thing to put in perspective with how this works with Trailblazer for people who don't necessarily see it. It's a 4/3. Yeah. You already have 3 mana, right? Let's assume on pace you draw your 4th land, right? You get to play a Trailblazer for 2. Yep. It enters the battlefield, but you also get a mana back. So you basically paid 1, right?
1 mana.
So you're only down 1 mana. Anything else you play now costs 2 less, and you're getting a card for it.
Right.
And that's assuming you only have one more thing that's worth playing because you also drew a card. It's very possible you could go Battlecrier, Outcaster, 4 and 5 things back to back.
Yeah,
right?
It's really not unfeasible there to go like Vaultborn Tyrant into Vaultborn Tyrant, like very soon.
Yeah.
After that, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like your Vaultborn Tyrant's going to be like 3-4 mana before long. I think this card snowballs in an insane way. I'm going
to tell you how much I believe in this card.
Yeah.
Like I found a couple places. I'm like, how much is this going for? How much people care about it? Varying prices between like $350 and $450. I found a place that had it for $2. I bought 8.
Snap it up.
I'm just saying,
snap
like,
it
real
up,
talk.
baby. Like, if nothing else, like fun commander shenanigans. But
yep.
I do feel like this card has real standard chops, man. I'm sorry. Like I know it. You can say it dies to this and that, but that's just a balanced Magic card. Mm-hmm. And balanced Magic cards have a chance to. I just don't think people are really noticing that. Like once you have 2 or 3 creatures in play, your dudes are like next to free.
Yeah,
and like the card's crazy. I think this card's crazy, and like this is so. I predict this will be like
bookmark this because when we come back and do another "How did we do" video, We'll
Yep.
see if I got more than $2 value out of each of these.
Yep. We always have the same like thought at the exact same time because I was thinking the same thing. Like when we come back to do the how did we do video on Dragonstorm, I feel like this will be one of the ones that holds up the best. But no one can see the future. I don't know why no one is seeing the present. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like the card
sure.
is obviously crazy. But
All right. So what's your
anyway,
number 2 here?
what is my next one? Okay, so my number 2 is Warden of the Grove. This is 3 mana, 2 and a green for a 2/2 Hydra. At the beginning of your end step, it gets a +1/+1 counter. And whenever, listen to this line of text. Whenever another non-token creature you control enters, it endures X, X being the number of counters on this creature. So that means whenever you play any non-token guy, you cast a creature, that creature is going to either enter with some number of +1/+1 counters, or you're going to make a large-ish token to go along with it. First thing I'll say about this card is that I'm not convinced that it's very standard playable. This does die to cut down and towards the tower. It's a 3-drop. Those aren't good lines. But this is one of those that I don't think people are really noticing for commander play. And I actually think in commander and like +1/+1 counter decks, this is insane, especially considering back to standard, but also commander. You can just put +1/+1 counters on this in other ways. And it's crazy to you.
I will say this. I agree with you. I think it's a lot of times where this is one of those cards people have looked at and said, well, what do we do with it in standard? I just got to survive till the end of the turn to get his first counter. And I don't really get anything till the next turn when the next creature comes out. But the fact that you get the option of either pumping up a thing or making some 2/2, 3/3, whatever, progressively each turn, right? That matters. Even if you, I guess, in a way, this could also go in anything that has, cares about ETB tokens, creatures, whatever, because you may never get the +1/+1s, but you're also getting the free creature every turn.
Yeah,
That's fine.
exactly. Yeah.
So it has a couple of dual uses, and I'll tell you, I have a +1/+1 counters deck that I absolutely will be playing this card in Commander. So I will be
Yeah.
able to report and tell you how much I feel about it, when the time comes.
Yeah, I think specifically in Commander +1/+1 counters decks, this card is nearly broken. It's because in context of Commander, it's actually fairly efficient to cast this card. It's turn over turn value, and in a lot of games of Commander, you'll be casting more than one creature a turn as the game goes on. So I think it's fairly easy to get 2 extra creatures a turn off of this. I'm really interested in the extra creatures. But a couple of things you want to point out, even in standard about this card, is that this too works extremely well in multiples because you get multiple instances of the ability. And of course, it puts a counter on itself every turn. So after a couple of turns, just it in and of itself will be a formidable guy. You got to deal with a 4/4 or a 5/5. That's a problem. But when that 5/5 is also just incidentally putting extra 3/3s into play at the rate of once or twice a turn, yeah, I think you got a real card on your hand.
Yeah, if
Again,
there's, I will
go
say
ahead.
this: if there's anything holding it back, it'll be that it's competing with some other things in the +1/+1 counter decks, like the Brushwag or whatever, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like that
that's
are just
true.
putting counters on things, doubling things. So that may be the only thing holding it back. This might be one of those casualties of just like standard's too big and there's no room for this guy. Like I don't
Yeah,
know, but I'm with you totally in Commander. I think this should, if you have a +1/+1 counters deck, this probably becomes a Commander staple for you.
probably. I just maybe people sometimes when a new mechanic happens, people are just like, skip it, new mechanic, I don't care. And like, maybe that's part of what's going on here. But that mechanic, Endure, is actually a very strong mechanic and contextually when it comes to this
Yeah.
card. So I like it. But what is your next card? I think you're on your number 2, if I'm
Yeah,
not
my number
mistaken. Yeah.
2. This is the card I've kind of wanted for Dragon decks because I've been playing various ones and, different looks depending on what the format had available. But finally, a 2-drop that Commander deck or Dragon decks really want, and it's Sarkhan Dragon Ascendant.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think this card is even better than people want it to be.
I was going to say, is this necessarily underrated? But that explains it. Yeah.
Like,
Even better.
even if, and I think people are missing this fact of rarely will you have you can keep a hand where it's just this and a dragon and always get a treasure, right? So even if he hits the battlefield and he dies, you are set to play a 4-mana thing next turn, no matter what,
Yeah.
which is huge. And we already know they've talked about us going back to like Lorwyn soon or whatever, where there are more changelings, right? So a year from now, we might be going like, well, now we have these quality 2, 3, 4 things that happen to be changelings, and now we want to ramp up. And Sarkhan works with those because they also count as dragons.
Dragons.
So this is going to be a card that only gets better into the future. Like this will be probably the worst this card will be in standard in the next like 6 months, 7 months. And then after that, it possibly goes back up.
Yeah, I feel like I make the point a lot to my audience about Lorwyn. I hate that Lorwyn got pushed back because so many sets recently have had these like creature type matters themes, and Lorwyn when we get the changelings, baby, it's going to be so much better. But yeah, I mean, to your point too, I think that we have enough like 4-drop decent dragons to where this is going to be good. Almost no matter what. I do think people expect this card to see play, but
Oh, absolutely.
again, I'm with you that I feel like it'll be not only seen more often than you think, but it will make this sort of base red dragons deck real, at least at some point during its life cycle, if not immediately. But you just look at a 2-drop that almost guaranteed gives you a treasure token. That's kind of good just in and of itself. You know what I mean?
Not just that,
But
gives you a treasure token, and if they don't kill it, it's very likely attacking as a 3/3 flyer
as a
on the next turn.
3/3 flyer, right? This is kind of a watch wolf that flies and gives you a treasure. That's wild. That's it. That's a card that almost shouldn't exist.
Like I'm really surprised this isn't going for $10.
Is it? I mean, what's it going for right now?
I've seen it for like 7 and 8 on different sites.
Okay, yeah,
which is fair, but it feels like it should definitely be more than that because the decks that want it are going to want at least 3 of them.
Right. I was going to say you're going to order multiples, but beyond that, I think this might go in like 5-color dragons and commander.
Oh,
that
for
deck
sure.
list just got really, really tight. But at the same time, you need 2s, and this card is really good, and just any deck carrying dragons. So,
I've also just looking around found some sites. It's actually way less than that. You can get these for under $4 in places.
What? I might actually order
again scooping them.
That's not bad at all, dude. But yeah, I just as far as it's even better than people think, yeah, I could agree with that. I've been looking at this card since they first previewed it, and it was one of the earlier cards previewed before PV season actually started. And this got me very excited for this standard just by itself. 100% agree on that end.
All right. What do you have for your number 1 here?
So I don't know how spicy this is, but I did want to pick at least one of these like Omen dragons because some of these people are really into. I was surprised by how much people liked the rare blue one, Meringue River Regent. I thought that was a sleeper. Everyone loves that card. But one that I haven't heard as much talk about is Scavenger Regent. This is the black rare Omen dragon. So 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 4/4 dragon with flying, ward, discard a card. Not bad, but Exude Toxin is the sorcery speed Omen mode. It's X and 2 black. Each non-dragon creature gets -X/-X until end of turn. So you have kind of a hook, kind of a meat hook massacre sweeper on the one side, and then just like a decent flyer that can end games on the other side that taxes your opponent's resources if they want to remove it. And I just think this card is just good. I just think in a vacuum, generically, just a very good Magic card that it might take a couple of mana to sweep some stuff off the board, but we saw with Hook last time it was in standard, not even that long ago, that sometimes just like -1 or 2 is enough to take out the majority of stuff that you worry about. And it can also turn your sweeper into a kind of a one-sided sweeper if you have larger creatures. So I don't know. I like everything about this. And one thing I haven't even mentioned, and the last thing I'll say before I throw it to you, is that not only is it like Hook or a Malicious Eclipse, right? One of these -/ sweepers in black, but it's one that doesn't just go to the graveyard. You draw it again later and can cast it again. And when you draw it later in the game, it's way better. You draw this on turn 9 and you can -5 everything. That's a real sweeper. So it's good early. It's good late. The creature might be good late. The creature might be good in the mid game, depending on what's been going on. So I just kind of like everything about this. Seen no one open their mouth about it. So
yeah, it's a weird one because I feel like pretty much every list I've seen where somebody's thinking about doing dragons that involves black, this card is included, obviously.
Yeah.
But yet, when you talk to people about it, they're kind of like, I don't know. I'm just like, well, worst case scenario, you're paying 4 for a 4/4 dragon that they have to discard a card to kill it. Like, okay.
I think that's fine.
Yeah, that's more than fair. Now, I think it does change how your deck's built because you don't necessarily want to play like the small ramp creatures or the 3/2 haste guy that searches for dragons if you're just going to kill them with Exude Toxin. But it's still a good card to have on both ends.
Maybe
Like,
you can lean a little bit more into rocks like the Iron Crag or
yeah,
that 2 mana rock we got that lets you play creatures. Forget what it's called. But yeah, there's a couple of rocks you could lean into if you wanted to do that. And there's also a couple of just like slightly higher toughness mana dorks, like you play a 1/3 mana dork and you hope to -2 with that. So I'm not sure. I don't know what it goes into. I mean, obviously everyone's trying to make like 5-color dragons a thing, but where
yeah.
I
I don't
think
think
this
you need to do
goes,
5 colors, but I think this
yeah,
very well fits into any type of like Abzans type
Rakdos,
stuff. Yeah, Rakdos
yeah.
dragons for sure.
If you're playing Rivaz of the Claw, this seems like a good follow.
Yeah, for sure.
But, I just altogether, I think that people are forgetting how much a sweeper like this can actually wreck the board state. And apart from that, again, people when do I will say this, you're right. When people bring this card up, it's in the context of Dragons decks. But like, what's to keep Golgari from playing the one of? Like a deck that
Yeah,
already exists. You know what I mean? Like it's just a solid mid-range card. So I expect some love for this thing, and we'll kind of see how things go once the season starts. But this like just kind of low-key looks like one of the more generically powerful cards in the set without being like broken
yeah,
or anything, you know. But what have you got? I think we're at your number one. Yeah,
yeah.
we are. What is your number one?
All right, this is the one where if we're gonna take an L,
Oh boy. All
this
right.
is gonna be the one. Mostly because I think people already like this card, but I think it's going to be more expensive than it is now. And
Oh,
it's
and we're at
going for a
pre-release
fair
prices.
value. It's going for like $12. So, matter of fact, I'm even going to check a couple of quick places right now, see if there's anywhere else there's deals on it. Okay, there's some places you can get it under that. There's some places where it's going for like 7 or 8. But
Okay.
Dragonback Assault,
Oh,
3
this card.
green,
Yeah,
blue, red.
yeah.
It's an enchantment. When it enters, it deals 3 damage to each creature in each planeswalker. But it also has landfall that whenever you play a land, you get a 4/4 dragon token with flying. This card,
Rampaging
man.
Baloths, but just like way better than Rampaging Baloths.
Yeah, well, the thing is, so easy to ramp a bunch of different ways. We already know that, right? We have a bunch of decks that do that. So getting to 6 isn't even a weird thing, right? We know that's viable.
It's normal.
Get rid of all the small stuff. Maybe you're dealing with one like 4/4 or 5/5 after the fact. You have other spot removal bounce spells that can deal with that. But if they don't deal with this, it's just like every turn is just value, right? I get a 4/4 and get to do something. If I'm ramping into this already and I'm playing those like whatever the green, what is it, the Dragonstorm, where like you search for 2 lands, and then
Oh
when a
yeah, yeah,
dragon enters the
that.
battlefield, you return it back to your hand.
Yeah, I really like that card.
That's just a 2 card combo with this.
Yep.
Like
Straight up.
you put it into play, I get 2 dragons, I get to return it to my hand. Let's do it
Yep.
again next turn.
Play it again. Yep.
Right?
Let's just do this every day. Yeah, over and
Yeah, because
over.
I'm not mistaken, right? Are the dragon storms? Let me double check because maybe it's just like when you cast a dragon, but I'm pretty sure
Maybe.
it's when a dragon
Maybe.
enters.
I always thought it was when
Search
a dragon
over.
enters.
Yeah, when a dragon you control enters, return. Yeah,
Bang. So yeah, yeah, those two cards, that is a 2 card combo. Exactly.
that
And
has to be a
you
deck.
will and
Like
you will play like that card, whatever it is, the explosive vegetation for dragons. You will play the green Dragonstorm. You will
not
play
just
that
that,
in this deck.
there are a couple of dragons that have omens that go search for lands.
Yeah.
Right? So you can
Yeah.
literally like turn 3, put a land into play, do whatever, go get my other 2 lands with my dragon storm, play this, wipe the board, now start like bouncing and making dragons. Like that's a whole deck with just dragons and enchantments effectively.
It's like you always gotta be careful with these like 6 mana enchantments. Not long ago, one of my the cards that I really wanted to play with, and it was in one of these lists, was like Rite of the Dragon Caller or whatever it
Yeah,
is. You do a thing, you make a 5/5 dragon. I could never get that card to work. And that's a 6 mana enchantment. And I have the same fear about this, but like you said, there's plenty of ramp in dragons decks that we didn't have previously have access to. But I also think this goes into at least potentially one existing deck. You could call this a win more. But I actually think this is a really neat win condition for Doppelgang,
yeah.
for Temur Doppelgang. Because not only are they going to be able to copy the enchantment itself, and at that point they could blow up a bunch of stuff on the table because they're getting a bunch of copies of this. They get the ETB trigger, but also because they're doppelganging lands. They tend to copy like 8 of their lands at one time. And if you do that, you get landfall triggers off of this. So again, pretty good way to like finish a game in Temur Doppelgang. So I think it's got a shot
Actually,
there.
a fun thing about that is you could actually do that just doppelganging for 2. So you get 2 copies of this, and then you get the triggers, but you can also stack them because they're all ETBs to where the damage happens, then you get
Happens
all your dragons. So you're just going to have
exactly,
lethal next turn.
which is a great little way to stack that. So I don't know. I do have some hopes for this card in standard, and I've been kind of afraid to say so until now. But so I'm glad this is your number one underrated. I'll say that I think everyone expects this to be a very played
Oh,
card in
absolutely.
Commander. But when it comes to standard, I don't think anybody really assumes this is going to see any play besides maybe the two of us and
For
one other
me,
believer
it's
out
just
there.
simply the fact of we get a card that no matter what, if it dies, you still got something first off, right? You still eliminated some
Yeah.
number of creatures or planeswalkers, or at least severely reduced the planeswalkers, right? But then the trigger is just playing magic, right? I'm going to play
Yeah.
lands.
Yep.
And they went ahead and seeded the deck with dragons that have spells on them that let me go get land,
That's
right?
right.
So I'm like,
So
why not? Like, and once I have the mana, I can just start playing the dragons, you know?
yeah. Yep. And you will. I mean, in your ramp deck, you will also have that mana eventually. So, I mean, the problem is, if you're playing a bunch of 5, 6, 7 drop dragons, do you have room for this card? But I'm making room for it. I want to believe because this card looks like one of the more fun cards to actually play with in the whole set. But you're right that I don't think people are really seeing. I think people see a 3 damage sweeper for 6 mana and they're like, this is dumb. But like again, we just talked about this with Scavenger Regent. You'd be surprised what 2 or 3 damage can do on
Oh,
some board
yeah.
states. And this isn't going to take out your larger creatures. I think that's kind of important too in your
Yeah. And you
dragons
still
deck.
supplement it with, say, like an early Brotherhood's End or something. So if your opponent gets like the fast mouse start, you're like, okay, I got to get rid of some stuff. Now I'll do my ramping things or whatever, right? You're still going to have to figure out, like I like to say, what the rest of the deck looks like.
Yep.
But in this
Yep.
particular case, it's very easy to just go, okay, I have an idea of what like 13 to 16 of the cards already are,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I can figure
Yeah.
out the rest.
It's a good base.
Mm-hmm.
I'll contend one more on Temur Doppelgang is that it's just another sweeper in Doppelgang. That deck already sometimes plays Brotherhood's End. It always plays Ill-Timed Explosion.
Yeah.
And this is just another sweeper for that deck. Like, if literally nothing else, like against aggro, you just take all their stuff out. You have to wait for the landfall trigger for next turn. Fine. That's fine. Who cares? So, yeah, I want to believe. I really do. I am Fox Mulder. I am Agent Mulder. And
Like I said, if
I
there's one
want to
I'm going to be
believe.
wrong on when we come back and visit, it's this. Right?
Yep.
It might
But
already be at its ceiling and it might not live up to the hype, but I think it can be even better than it is.
yeah, I agree. I do. But that, I believe, is it for this one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and dude, that's a good list. I think we covered a
Yeah.
lot of ground. We had a bunch of variety of cards, and I think this kind of
Rares
speaks.
and mythics and uncommons and commons
Yeah,
and
I think
stuff.
it speaks to the set as a whole. There's just quality all the way through. Doesn't matter what color you want to play. So yeah, it's always good. But why don't you tell everybody where they can find you so we can talk about
Oh,
some of the other cards that might be just a little bit overrated?
yeah, we're going to talk about the overrated stuff over on my channel. Just put in SBMTG into your search bar. You'll find me. Or if you want to do it the more complicated way, my channel is strictly better MTG. But it really just takes those 5 letters. And you will find my channel where we're going to be talking about the overrated stuff. Maybe people thinking these are a little too good. Maybe in Tarkir Dragonstorm.
Yep, we definitely have a lot to talk about. So we'll catch you on the next one. Wherever you're watching, good morning, good afternoon, good night. Be awesome to each other.